There is a quiet way of thinking that silently governs many people, the feeling that life is always harder on them. When something breaks apart, we think it is a sign that we were wrong. When a door closes, we believe the road ahead has been blocked. And gradually, we step into life with a defensive posture, as if everything that happens is merely another trial to endure. But Carl Jung saw the human being in a deeper way. He believed that what shapes our lives is not only what happens to us, but the way we see and respond to what happens. When a person believes that every hardship is evidence of failure, life appears more and more cruel. But when a person begins to live with a different assumption, that even challenges are leading them toward growth, the way they enter the world begins to change. In this video, we will explore a powerful idea in Jung's philosophy. Act as if everything is ultimately unfolding for your benefit. Not to deny hardship, but to understand that the way you step into life can change the way life opens before you. Stay until the end of the video, because the 5 truths ahead may cause you to look again at what is happening in your life, and realize that perhaps nothing was ever against you in the way you once believed. The first truth. The world reflects your inner world. Human beings often believe that they are seeing the world objectively. We think that what we feel about other people, about circumstances, or about life itself is simply a reaction to reality. But from Carl Jung's point of view, that is rarely true. Most of the time, we do not see the world as it is. We see it through our own inner world. Memories, deep beliefs, unnamed fears, and old experiences create an invisible lens. Each day, when we step outside, we carry that lens with us without even realizing it. That is why 2 people can go through the same circumstance and yet experience 2 completely different realities. One person sees opportunity and difficulty, another sees only risk. One person enters a conversation with openness, another enters it with defensiveness. Outer circumstances do not change as much as we imagine. What truly changes lies in the inner world each person carries with them when they step into that circumstance. In a way, the outer world is like a great mirror, and our mind is what determines which image will be reflected. I once realized this in a very ordinary situation. One afternoon, I was sitting in a familiar cafe. The late afternoon light fell softly through the glass window. The space was quiet, with a few small conversations murmuring around me. As I looked out toward the street, I suddenly saw Jaden, an old friend I had not seen in many years. We used to be quite close, but a few misunderstandings in the past had gradually created distance between us. The moment Jaden walked into the cafe and recognized me, my first reaction was a slight tension inside. Within just a few seconds, my mind returned to old memories, unfinished conversations, awkward feelings I had once believed were never resolved. I was almost certain that this meeting would be uncomfortable. But what happened next was completely different. Jaden walked over, smiled naturally, and said, "Long time no see." We sat down and talked for a while. There was none of the awkwardness I had imagined. The conversation unfolded normally, even quite comfortably, and in that very moment, I realized something with great clarity. The initial tension had not come from Jaden. It had come from the story I had been carrying in my head for years. Carl Jung once wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." When many people first read this sentence, They think Jung is only talking about irritation toward others. But his meaning goes deeper than that. Our strongest reactions to the outer world often reveal more about ourselves than about that world. In Jungian psychology, this phenomenon is called projection. When an emotion, fear, or belief exists in the unconscious, and we have not yet recognized it, the mind tends to project it outward into the world. We begin to see in others what is actually existing within ourselves. What unsettles us most in the outer world is sometimes the very part inside us that we have never clearly seen. This happens very often in everyday life. Someone who has once been betrayed may enter new relationships with quiet suspicion. Someone who grew up with the feeling of not being good enough may believe that others are judging them, even when those people are simply silent. Someone carrying many unhealed wounds may easily see coldness everywhere. Outer reality does not necessarily contain those things, but the mind has grown accustomed to searching for them. A simple way to picture this is to imagine the mind as a mirror. If that mirror is covered with the dust of old memories and old beliefs, the reflected image will become distorted. But when that dust is seen and gradually wiped away, the reflection begins to grow clearer. The outer world may remain the same, but the way we see it begins to change. That is why Jung believed that the journey of understanding the world always begins with the journey of understanding oneself. When a person begins to observe their own reactions, what irritates them, what angers them, what makes them feel threatened, they are seeing the hidden parts of their own mind. Those reactions are like signposts, showing where an old belief or an old story still remains unclear within the psyche. Most people spend a great deal of time trying to change the outer world. They want to change circumstances, change other people, change situations. But Jung believed that the deeper path often begins in the opposite direction. Look inward first. When a person understands their inner world clearly, they also begin to see the outer world with greater clarity. So when you begin to understand your inner world, you not only understand yourself more deeply, you also understand life more deeply. You gradually realize that many things that once triggered strong reactions in you were actually just mirrors reflecting parts within you that had not yet been understood. And when the light of awareness begins to shine into that inner world, the way you see people, circumstances, and your own life becomes softer and clearer. The outer world may remain the same, but in the stillness of awareness, you begin to see that you are no longer being pulled along by old reflections. You are learning to look at life with deeper and freer eyes. The second truth. The unconscious responds through action, not words. And when we begin to realize that the outer world often reflects our inner world, a deeper layer of human psychology gradually reveals itself. Beneath conscious thought exists a silent but immensely powerful part of the mind, the unconscious. This part of the mind is not persuaded by beautiful words that we repeat each day. It doesn't argue with us, nor does it analyze like reason. It simply watches, quietly, how we live. From Carl Jung's perspective, human beings are not truly defined by what they say about themselves, but by the actions they repeat in everyday life. Carl Jung once wrote a sentence that is very brief, yet sharp. You are what you do, not what you say you'll do. This sentence touches a psychological truth that many people often avoid. People can talk endlessly about wanting to change their lives, wanting to become stronger, more confident, or a better version of themselves. But if everyday life is still guided by old habits, old reactions, and old fears, then in the deepest layer of the mind, the unconscious continues to believe the familiar story. It does not remember promises. It remembers what is proven through action. The reason lies in the way the unconscious operates. Our conscious mind thinks through language, through logic, and through argument. We may tell ourselves that we understand the problem, that we will change starting tomorrow. But the unconscious does not read those words in the way we imagine. It reads about experience. Each repeated action is like a mark carved into the deeper layer of the mind. And over time, those marks gradually become the beliefs the unconscious holds about who you are. A profound example in literature helps make this clear, in Victor Hugo's novel Les Misérables. The character Jean Valjean was once a convict, carrying a heavy past and the contempt of society. After being forgiven and treated with compassion by Bishop Myriel, he experienced a moral shock that led him to decide to change his life. From that moment on, Valjean tried to live differently, not only through a promise, but through concrete choices made over many years. Jean Valjean began to live as a new man. He helped the poor, protected the vulnerable, and repeatedly chose to do what was right, even when it required sacrificing his own interests. Over time, those actions gradually formed a path of life different from his past. If viewed through the lens of modern psychology, we can understand this change as a process in which repeated actions reinforce a new identity. By continuously living and acting as a better man, Valjean gradually became the man he had chosen to be. This story reflects a very real principle of the human mind. We do not become the person we imagine ourselves to be. We become the person our actions prove each day. A person does not become brave simply because they think they are brave. They become brave because they keep walking even while they are afraid. To understand this mechanism more clearly, imagine the unconscious as a vast forest. Each action you take is like a footprint passing through that forest. A single step may leave no obvious trace. But when the same path is walked hundreds, even thousands of times, a trail begins to form. Over time, that trail becomes the easiest path in the forest. And when faced with a new choice, the unconscious often guides you back to the most familiar path. That is how habit and identity are formed in the human mind. Not from grand declarations, but from small actions repeated long enough. What you do each day quietly becomes the story the unconscious believes about you. And when the unconscious believes that story long enough, it begins to guide how you think, how you feel, and how you step into the world. Carl Jung saw the process of human change from this angle. He did not believe that people change simply by thinking differently. Real change begins when a person begins to live differently, even if only slightly. When someone starts acting in the direction of the version of themselves they want to become, they are sending entirely new signals into the deeper layers of the mind. At first, this kind of change often feels unnatural. A person used to withdrawing into themselves will feel strange when they begin speaking their thoughts out loud. A person used to procrastinating will find it difficult when they begin doing immediately something they once always avoided. But for the unconscious, what matters is not whether the feeling is comfortable or not. What matters is that the signal of action has changed. When these new signals are repeated long enough, something very interesting begins to happen. The emotions people often think must come first, such as confidence, clarity, or readiness, gradually appear after action. What first felt awkward becomes familiar. What once frightened us begins to feel normal. Not because circumstances changed first, but because the map inside the mind has begun to change. So real transformation rarely begins with a grand decision or a powerful promise. It often begins with a small but genuine action. A small choice you make today. A step you once used to avoid. When those small actions are repeated long enough, the unconscious gradually rewrites the story it believes about you. And when the inner story changes, the way you step into the world begins to change as well. If this part makes you pause for a moment and reflect on how you are living, leave your thoughts in the comments. Sometimes change does not begin with grand decisions, but with a very small moment when we are honest enough to look at ourselves and speak what we have just realized. A thought written down, an insight shared, is already an action. And as Jung once suggested, it is those small but genuine actions that quietly shape the person we are becoming. The third truth. The hero within you is waiting to be awakened. If new actions are repeated long enough, a deeper movement begins to take place within the mind. This is when another part of the human being gradually awakens. In Carl Jung's psychology, that part is called the hero archetype. The hero here is not a character from mythical tales with a sword and resounding victories. The hero Jung spoke of is a psychological possibility that exists in every human being. The ability to rise, to face fear, and gradually become one's true self. A follower of the channel once left a comment that stayed with me for a long time. He shared that for many years, his life looked quite stable from the outside. He had a steady job, enough income to live on, and everything seemed to be following a safe path. But inside, he always carried a vague feeling that he was living a life that did not truly belong to him. Each day felt like a chain of repeated habits. He was not truly unhappy, but he also did not feel that he was living in alignment with who he really was. One evening, after watching a video about Jung's philosophy, he began asking himself a simple question. If he kept living like this for another 10 years, would he feel that he had truly lived? That question stayed with him for a long time. And then he decided to try changing one very small thing. He began setting aside a few hours each week to study again a field he had loved in his youth, but had abandoned because he believed it was impractical. At first, it was only a small change in his schedule. Nothing dramatic happened immediately. But after many months, he realized that something inside him had begun to feel different. Not because his life had suddenly become easier, but because he had begun to see himself as someone capable of walking in the direction he truly wanted. When I read his story, what stood out was not that he changed jobs or changed career paths. What stood out was the moment he dared to move toward the thing he had always hesitated before. In Jungian psychology, that moment is precisely when the hero archetype begins to move. The hero does not appear when everything is already clear. The hero appears when a person dares to step into the unknown. They are not certain what is waiting ahead, but they keep walking anyway. Carl Jung believed that every human being carries many potentials that have not yet been fully lived. But most of the time, those potentials are covered over by the roles we have learned from society. We learn how to be safe, learn how to avoid mistakes, and learn how to live along paths that have already been laid out. Those roles gradually became a psychological mask that Jung called the persona. This mask helps us adapt to the world, but if we live in it for too long, we can slowly forget who we truly are. That is why Jung believed the most important journey of a lifetime is not becoming a perfect ideal in the eyes of society. The most important journey is gradually becoming oneself. He once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." This sentence is not about a sudden breakthrough. It is about a long process in which a human being slowly removes the layers they once wore in order to adapt to the world. In the process Jung called individuation, a person begins to look directly at the parts within that they once avoided. It may be fear of failure, a feeling of not being enough, or dreams they once thought were too far away. When those parts are clearly seen, something interesting begins to happen. Instead of continuing to run from them, a person begins to move toward them. And in that very moment, the hero within begins to awaken. To picture this process more easily, imagine a human being as a seed buried deep in the earth. For a long time, from the outside, it may seem as though nothing is changing. But beneath the dark soil, a silent process is underway. The seed is splitting open, growing roots, and preparing for the moment it will reach toward the light. When the small sprout finally breaks through the soil and appears on the surface, we call that the beginning. But in truth, the beginning happened long before that. The awakening of the hero within a human being is much the same. It does not happen in a single moment. It is the result of many experiences, many thoughts, and many small actions accumulating over time. Each time a person dares to step a little farther beyond what is familiar, they are helping that seed grow stronger. Jung believed that human beings do not truly mature by avoiding their fear. They mature by daring to enter the unknown part of themselves. That does not mean life becomes easier. In fact, the first steps of this journey are often accompanied by instability and uncertainty. But it is precisely in those uncertain spaces that people begin to discover the strongest parts of themselves. The hero in Jungian psychology is not someone who feels no fear. The hero is the one who keeps walking even while fear remains. They do not wait for everything to become perfect. They walk while the path is still dim, while the answers are still unclear. And it is those steps that gradually shape the person they become. Over time, when a person continues walking in that way they see life also changes. Difficulties once seen only as failure begin to be seen as necessary trials. Moments of instability are no longer only things to avoid, but become a natural part of the journey of growth. The lesson of this section is very clear and also very profound. The hero we often search for in great stories has in truth always existed inside every human being. It does not wait for a perfect moment to appear. It waits only for the moment when you dare to take a step, even a very small one, in the direction of the person you truly feel you want to become. And perhaps the most important journey of life is not the search for strength somewhere outside. It is the journey of gradually realizing that the power to change your life has always lived within you, waiting only for the moment when you are brave enough to awaken it. The fourth truth. The path opens for those who dare to walk with faith. Yet when human beings begin to recognize the deeper call within themselves, they also realize another truth. The road ahead rarely appears with perfect clarity. There are seasons in life when we no longer wish to return to the old road. But the new road is still dim. It is in spaces like these that faith becomes deeply important. In Carl Jung's philosophy, human beings do not mature by waiting for absolute certainty. They mature by learning how to move forward, even when they cannot yet see the whole picture of their life. Jung once wrote, "Faith, hope, love, and insight are the highest achievements of human effort." For him, faith was not merely a simple emotional state. It was a deep psychological capacity that allows a person to cross the dim regions of life that reason cannot yet fully understand. Life does not always hand us a clear map. In fact, many of the most important turning points in a human life appear in moments when the road ahead is still very unclear. A very clear symbol of this appears in the Bible, in the story of Peter walking on water. While the disciples were in a boat in the midst of a storm, they saw Jesus walking on the water. Peter asked to step out of the boat and walk toward him. What is remarkable is that in the first moment, Peter truly did walk on the water. But when he looked down at the waves and allowed fear to take hold of his mind, he began to sink. At the symbolic level, this story is not only about a miracle, it reflects a very deep psychological law. When faith guides action, human beings can move beyond limits they once thought impossible. But when the attention of the mind turns toward fear, that step immediately begins to waver. In Jungian psychology, this reflects the nature of the individuation journey. When a person begins to live more truthfully in relation to themselves, they often have to leave behind familiar structures that once gave them a sense of safety. New choices rarely come with complete certainty. There are moments when a person has only a faint inner feeling that this direction is true to their deepest nature. And in moments like these, faith becomes a unique kind of psychological energy. It helps a person keep walking when reason still does not have all the answers. Modern science also offers an interesting perspective on this phenomenon. In the study of the brain, neuroscientists have discovered that human beings have a system called the reticular activating system. This is the part of the brain responsible for filtering the information we notice in the world around us. Reality always contains countless signals and opportunities, but the brain only allows us to recognize what it considers important. When a person begins to act in a new direction, this system begins to adjust the way they see the world. Opportunities, people, and possibilities related to that path begin to appear more clearly. This makes many people feel as if life is starting to open up when they dare to take a step. But in truth, those possibilities have always existed in the world. It is simply that before action, the mind had not yet been adjusted to perceive them. When action changes, perception changes with it. People begin to see doors they once walked past without ever noticing. A simple way to picture this is to imagine someone holding a small flashlight and walking down a dark path through a forest at night. The beam of the flashlight only reaches a few meters ahead. If that person insists on seeing the entire path before taking the first step, they will stand still forever. But if they walk one step at a time, the light will always reveal the next stretch of the road. The whole path does not appear at the beginning. It only reveals enough for the next step. Human life often works in very much the same way. Carl Jung believed that many people remain stuck in life not because they lack ability, but because they wait for certainty before acting. They want to know that their choice is definitely right, that the road ahead will be safe. But the real turning points of life rarely appear in places of certainty. They usually appear at the boundary between the familiar and the unknown. And at that boundary, a person must make a very important choice: return to the old zone of safety or keep moving forward. What is interesting is that when a person truly crosses that boundary, they often discover that they are far stronger than they once believed. New abilities begin to emerge. New roads begin to form, not because life suddenly changes all at once, but because they have begun stepping into a different way of living. The application of this in real life is actually very simple. A human being does not need to solve their entire future all at once. What is usually needed is only the next step. A conversation you have been postponing. A skill you want to begin learning. A small decision that brings you closer to the person you truly feel you want to become. When those small steps are taken, the path gradually becomes clearer in ways you could not see before. Before continuing, take a quiet moment. Slow your breathing and give yourself a very small pause. Sometimes, in the rush of life, we forget that the journey of growth is not about running as fast as possible, but about walking with awareness. If there is a path in your life that you feel you need to step toward, even if it is still dim, leave a simple sentence in the comments. I choose to walk with faith. Sometimes writing just one sentence like that is already a way of reminding yourself that every great journey in life begins with one small step filled with faith. The fifth truth: you do not control life, you co-create reality with it. It is here, when a person has become brave enough to walk with faith, that they gradually realize a deeper truth about life. We do not truly control everything that is happening, but neither are we completely powerless before it. Life is not a machine whose every gear can be controlled by human hands, but it is also not a flow of pure randomness. From Carl Jung's point of view, life is like an ongoing process of interaction between the outer world and the human inner world. We are not absolute controllers, but we are not passive spectators either. We are co-creators with our own life. Carl Jung once wrote a very famous line, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This sentence holds a very deep psychological truth. Most human beings believe that their life is determined by circumstance, by luck, or by external factors. But Jung believed that much of what we call fate is actually just unconscious patterns repeating themselves in life. Throughout life, each person carries beliefs, memories, and psychological patterns that were formed very early. These patterns affect how we perceive opportunity, how we respond to hardship, and even the choices we think we are making freely. When those patterns remain in the unconscious, a person feels as if life is happening to them. But when those patterns begin to be recognized, a person begins to understand that they can participate in shaping their own reality. An interesting example of this can be seen in the story of Sarah Blakely, the founder of the Spanx brand. Before becoming one of the most successful female entrepreneurs in America, Sarah went through many failures. She had been rejected from many jobs, had worked ordinary sales jobs, and had no business background at all. But what is interesting is that in her family, her father would ask his children one very unusual question every evening. "What did you fail at today?" If the answer was no, he would say that perhaps they had not tried hard enough. That way of seeing things completely changed the way Sarah faced life. Instead of seeing failure as a sign that she was going in the wrong direction, she saw it as a natural part of the creative journey. When she began developing the idea for Spanx, she had no experience in the fashion industry, no investors, and no guarantee that her product would succeed. But she kept acting, step by step, bringing her ideas into the world. And it was precisely that process that opened opportunities she had not previously been able to see. From Jung's point of view, this story is not only a business story, it reflects a very important psychological principle. When human beings change the way they relate to life, reality begins to change in a corresponding way. Not because they control everything, but because they begin participating in the creative process of life, instead of merely reacting to it. A simple way to picture this is to imagine life as a piece of music being played. Many people think they are merely passive listeners, that the melody of life has already been written. But in Jung's view, a human being is like a musician playing along with a great orchestra. You cannot control the entire composition. You cannot decide everything that will happen. But you can decide how you will play your part. And when you change the way you play, the whole piece of music begins to change as well. This also explains why two people can go through very similar circumstances and yet live completely different lives. One person sees opportunity in upheaval and begins to act. Another sees the very same upheaval and feels trapped. Outer reality may be similar, but the way each person participates in that reality is entirely different. In Jungian psychology, this process is tied to the journey of individuation. When people begin to recognize their unconscious patterns, they gradually become freer in the way they live. They are no longer pulled along by old automatic reactions. Instead, they begin choosing how to respond to life. And in those small choices, a form of creativity begins to unfold. What is fascinating is that when a person lives in this way, life often begins to feel lighter. Not because hardship disappears, but because they are no longer trying to control everything. They understand that life is an interactive process. There are parts they can influence and parts they must learn to accept. When the tension of control disappears, human energy begins to be released for creation. An image that may make this clearer is to imagine someone learning how to surf. Beginners often try to fight the wave. They tense their whole body, try to control the movement of the water, and fall again and again. But skilled surfers do not try to control the ocean. They observe the rhythm of the waves, adjust their body to the movement of the water, and cooperate with it. They do not command the wave, but together with it, they create a beautiful motion. Life is the same. When human beings try to control everything, they often feel exhausted. But when they learn to listen, adapt, and act from a more awakened place, they begin to feel that they are moving with the flow of life. The practical application of this is actually very simple and yet very profound. Human beings do not need to control their entire life. What is needed is to learn how to participate in it consciously. And that can begin through small actions. Notice your reactions, recognize the old patterns that keep repeating, and choose to respond in a new way. Each time you do that, you are bringing one more part of the unconscious into the light. Over time, those small choices begin to change the way people experience reality. They no longer feel as though life is happening to them. They begin to feel that they are living in a living relationship with life, where every action, every awareness, and every choice helps shape their experience. And perhaps that is the deepest meaning of this final truth. Human beings do not need to control their entire life in order to live a meaningful one. What is needed is to learn how to step into life with awareness, with faith, and with a willingness to participate in its own creative unfolding. When that happens, you no longer try to force life to follow your will. You begin to live as a co-creator with reality itself. As this journey comes to a close, the most important thing Carl Jung's philosophy leaves us is not a formula for controlling life. It is a deeper way of seeing how we step into reality. When a person begins to live as if everything happening carries meaning for their growth, they are no longer swept into the feeling of struggling against life. Instead, they learn to walk with awareness, with faith, and with a willingness to explore themselves. Act as if everything will work out in the end is not advice meant to deny hardship. It is a psychological attitude that helps a person remain steady even when the road ahead is still unclear. When you step into life with the faith that every experience is leading you toward a deeper version of yourself, the way you see the world begins to change. And sometimes that very shift is what makes life seem to open in a completely different way. If the reflections in this video touched something inside you, press like and subscribe to the channel so that you can continue exploring with us the depths of the human mind through the lens of Carl Jung. Because sometimes, what is waiting for you ahead is not an answer, but a new version of yourself, waiting to be fully lived.